Hello everyone, and welcome to my YNR Official 24 channel. The shockwaves reverberated across Genoa City when news broke that Nick Newman, the stalwart pillar of the Newman family and a man whose life had been defined by power, love, betrayal, and the unending chaos of business and family drama, was dead, leaving everyone from Victor to Sharon, Phyllis, Nikki, and even his sometimes adversarial siblings stunned and reeling. Because Nick was not just another character in the endless entanglement of corporate battles and personal vendettas. He was someone whose presence had defined an era in Genoa City, whose charm, resilience, and occasional stubbornness had made him both beloved and feared. And now, with his death, a vacuum had been created that threatened to upend everything. The Newman empire teetered on the brink, family alliances shattered, old wounds reopened, and the hunt for justice became not just a desperate scramble, but a cat-and-mouse game of high stakes. Because the truth about who had orchestrated this unspeakable act was far more twisted and devious than anyone could have imagined, revealing a plot that intertwined betrayal, deception, greed, and long-hidden grudges, starting with Matt Clark, whose own shadowy motives had been gradually coming into focus over the past few months, a man who had clawed his way back into the lives of Genoa City's elite, weaving manipulation and seduction into the very fabric of their lives, all while hiding a dangerous secret, his willingness to kill to secure his freedom and power. And now it was clear that Matt could never have succeeded in his audacious escape plan without a silent accomplice, someone who had been operating in plain sight, playing both sides, maintaining a facade of loyalty while feeding crucial information and providing logistical support to ensure that Matt could vanish from the city's radar just as Nick had been eliminated. And as the police investigation unfolded, layers of intrigue peeled back to reveal that the person who had aided Matt was none other than one of Nick's closest confidants, someone whose proximity to him had been a shield, a source of comfort and counsel, which made the betrayal sting all the more, because who would have suspected that behind the warm smiles, the friendly advice, and the seemingly unwavering loyalty lay a calculating mind capable of cold-blooded treachery, someone who had weighed every risk, every opportunity, and had chosen the path that led directly to Nick's untimely demise, orchestrating a scenario so perfectly that the initial chaos seemed like an accident, leaving friends and family scrambling to piece together fragmented evidence, motives, and alibis, each clue revealing a darker layer of deceit, including secret financial transactions, hidden communications, cryptic meetings at late hours, all converging on the shocking revelation of the accomplice's identity, a figure whose involvement had been masked by history, trust, and emotional entanglements, and as the truth surfaced, the emotional fallout was immediate and intense. Victor Newman, Nick's father, whose life had already been a roller coaster of victories and losses, experienced a profound rage that was equal parts grief, betrayal, and determination for retribution, plotting in the shadows, contemplating strategies that would not only avenge his son but also dismantle the network of lies that had allowed such a tragedy to occur, while Sharon, reeling from both grief and confusion, struggled with guilt and heartbreak, questioning whether there had been signs. She missed moments when she could have intervened, even as Phyllis, Nikki, and other members of the Newman and Abbott families scrambled to protect each other and assess the threats now looming over them, because in Genoa City, power, vengeance, and secrets were never confined to boardrooms or hidden corners. They spilled into homes, offices, and hearts with a ferocity that could destroy anyone in their path. And the city itself seemed to hold its breath as every character wrestled with their own moral compass, their loyalty, and the unrelenting truth that Nick's death had shifted the balance of power, exposing vulnerabilities and reshaping alliances, from business rivals who suddenly saw opportunities to capitalize on the Newman Empire's moment of instability to friends whose trust had been irrevocably shattered, as detective work, forensic evidence, and tense confrontations revealed that the accomplice had meticulously orchestrated their involvement, leveraging personal knowledge, intimate understanding of Nick's routines, and subtle manipulations of other characters' perceptions to ensure that suspicion fell elsewhere, creating alibis that were seemingly airtight. And as the layers of deceit were peeled back, the city began to see the shocking lengths to which someone could go for ambition, revenge, or survival, culminating in an explosive confrontation where Matt's freedom and the accomplice's true identity collided in a sequence of events that were at once dramatic, heart-wrenching, and inevitably tragic, leaving no one in Genoa City untouched by the fallout, forcing every character to confront their own desires, fears, and loyalties, as the lines between friend and foe blurred, and the moral implications of betrayal, murder, and complicity became inescapably clear, because in a world where love, power, and revenge intersect so dangerously, the death of Nick Newman was not merely a personal loss. It was a seismic event that rattled the foundations of the entire community, altering destinies, forcing alliances to be reconsidered, enemies to be reevaluated, and hearts to be tested in ways no one could have foreseen, all while the shadow of the accomplice loomed over Genoa City, their motivations a complex blend of ambition, desperation, and hidden grudges, making every interaction tense, every conversation loaded with subtext. As the city grappled with the realization that betrayal could come from the closest quarters, that a friend could be an enemy in disguise, and that justice, vengeance, and survival were intertwined in a web that only the shrewdest could navigate, leading to high-stakes boardroom battles, emotionally charged confrontations in homes and offices, and clandestine operations that threatened to unravel lives and careers, as Victor Newman's legendary determination collided with Matt and his accomplice's cunning, resulting in a series of plot twists, reveals, and confrontations that kept the city and the audience on the edge of their seats, because this was not just about a murder. It was about identity, loyalty, and the enduring question of whether anyone in Genoa City could truly be trusted. And in the midst of this chaos, the surviving Newmans, their allies, and even rivals were forced to make choices that would define the rest of their lives, navigating grief, rage, and the desire for justice, culminating in the ultimate realization that Nick's death was both an ending and a beginning, the end of an era, defined by his presence, influence, and love, and the beginning of a new chapter in Genoa City, where secrets, power plays, and emotional reckoning would dominate every interaction, every business deal, and every family gathering. And as the layers of intrigue continued to unravel, one undeniable truth emerged. The identity of the person who killed Nick and helped Matt escape was more than a shocking twist. It was a revelation that would reverberate for years, changing relationships, shifting power dynamics, and forever altering the emotional landscape of the young and the restless, because in this city, nothing was ever as it seemed, and the death of Nick Newman proved, in the most dramatic way possible, that loyalty could be bought, trust could be betrayed, and the line between hero and villain was only as solid as the secrets one kept, leaving viewers gasping, hearts racing, and minds spinning as they absorbed the full magnitude of a plot that was as heart-wrenching as it was cunning, a story where love, loss, power, and revenge collided in an unforgettable crescendo, ensuring that Genoa City and its citizens would never be the same again. And yet, even as Genoa City reeled from the devastating news of Nick Newman's death, the ripple effects of his murder and the shocking revelation of the accomplice's identity continued to unfold with a ferocity that seemed almost impossible to contain, because in a city where wealth, power, and personal vendettas are so deeply intertwined, one death does not merely end a story, it detonates it, sending shrapnel into every corner of the lives connected to the victim, forcing every character to confront the duality of their own morality, the fragility of trust, and the inescapable reality that in Genoa City, no one is ever truly safe, and nowhere is that more apparent than in the corridors of Newman Enterprises, the empire Nick had spent decades shaping, an empire that suddenly felt exposed, vulnerable, and more like a battlefield than a bastion of corporate might, because with Nick gone, old rivals smelled opportunity, old wounds reopened, and every transaction, every decision, every relationship was scrutinized under the harsh light of uncertainty, while Victor Newman, Nick's father, oscillated between grief and calculated fury, a man who had survived decades of betrayal, corporate coups, and personal tragedies, but who had never faced a loss so intimately devastating, a loss that cut through the armor of experience to leave raw emotion exposed. Yet, even in his pain, Victor's mind was racing, plotting the steps he would take to ensure that justice, or perhaps vengeance, would be delivered in a way that only a Newman could conceive, because in his eyes, no accomplice, no matter how cunning or close, could escape the wrath of a father who had seen the depths of human cruelty and had matched it with his own brand of relentless power. And as Victor meticulously orchestrated his response, he relied on allies old and new, including Phyllis, whose own complicated relationship with the Newman family had always teetered between loyalty and self-interest, a woman who now found herself torn between grief for a man she had loved and the pragmatic need to survive in a city where the line between friend and enemy was constantly shifting. As she navigated conversations with Sharon, whose emotional turmoil mirrored the intensity of the city itself, a woman who had loved Nick in her own complicated way, whose sense of guilt, despair, and helplessness threatened to consume her entirely, while Nikki, ever the resilient matriarch, found herself stepping into a leadership role she had often avoided, balancing the emotional needs of her family with the ruthless demands of corporate reality, guiding those around her through a storm where every decision carried moral weight and potentially catastrophic consequences, all while the law loomed in the background, detectives and forensic teams piecing together the evidence of Nick's death, following leads that twisted and turned, each revelation complicating the narrative, each alibi tested, and every witness questioned, because the accomplice's brilliance lay not only in committing the crime but in manipulating the aftermath, orchestrating doubt, misdirection, and confusion so skillfully that suspicion was carefully diverted, creating a labyrinthine puzzle for law enforcement to navigate. And yet, despite their expertise, the detectives could not ignore the emotional undercurrents that had shaped this tragedy, the deep-seated animosities, the secret alliances, the simmering resentments, and the long-buried grudges that had finally erupted into violence, because in Genoa City, history is never past. It is a living, breathing force that shapes every decision, every interaction, every betrayal, and Nick's death was a culmination of decades of unresolved tension, heartbreak, and ambition, a violent punctuation mark in a saga that had been building since the city's earliest days of wealth, power, and scandal. And as the narrative unfolded, the accomplice's identity, once hidden behind layers of charm, friendship, and subtle manipulation, was revealed in a moment so shocking that it left the city gasping, questioning everything they had ever believed about loyalty, trust, and the people closest to them. And yet, even with the truth exposed, the emotional toll was far from over, because relationships fractured, alliances shifted, and every character was forced to re-examine their place in a world that suddenly felt more dangerous and unpredictable than ever before. From business rivals plotting to capitalize on Newman Enterprises' moment of vulnerability to former friends reassessing their connections, wondering if betrayal could strike them next, all while Matt Clark, now free from the immediate threat of capture, navigated his newfound freedom with a mixture of arrogance, caution, and desperation. Aware that while he had escaped immediate consequences, the web of intrigue, revenge, and emotional reckoning in Genoa City would not allow him to remain unscathed for long, and as he plotted his next moves, he found unexpected challenges in those who had underestimated him, those who were quietly gathering intelligence, building coalitions, and preparing to bring him, and the accomplice who had aided him, to justice in ways that were as clever as they were ruthless, because in a city defined by cunning, strategy, and the unrelenting pursuit of power, a misstep could be fatal, and every decision carried consequences that rippled far beyond the immediate moment, affecting lives, businesses, and hearts alike. And as the weeks passed, the emotional and psychological fallout intensified, with friends and family oscillating between grief, anger, and disbelief, grappling with the shocking reality that a loved one had been killed by someone they trusted, someone whose proximity had masked their malevolence. And as each revelation surfaced, new questions emerged about motive, about hidden relationships, about the lengths to which ambition and desperation could drive a person, because Nick's death was more than a single event. It was a lens through which the city could examine itself, revealing the darkest corners of ambition, the fragility of trust, and the explosive potential of human emotion when combined with power, greed, and resentment, and nowhere was this more evident than in the boardrooms, homes, and private conversations of those most intimately connected to the Newman family, where every word, gesture, and secret glance carried weight. As alliances shifted, old rivalries reignited, and new threats emerged from unexpected quarters, each actor navigating a treacherous landscape of emotion, strategy, and survival, because in Genoa City, the personal and professional are inextricably linked, and the death of a man like Nick Newman touches every aspect of life, business, and human connection, forcing characters to confront questions of morality, loyalty, and identity in ways they had never anticipated. And as the investigation continued, layers of the accomplice's cunning were revealed in painstaking detail, from financial manipulations and hidden communications to secret meetings and subtle psychological games designed to misdirect and destabilize everyone around them. And as these details became public, the city collectively reeled, understanding, for the first time, the extraordinary depth of deceit involved, while individuals were forced to reckon with their own complicity, whether through action, inaction, or failure to see the signs, because in Genoa City, everyone's choices have consequences, and Nick's death was a stark reminder that in a world defined by secrets, ambition, and human desire, even the strongest, most trusted individuals are vulnerable. And as the narrative continued to unfold, the emotional landscape of the city shifted dramatically, from moments of tearful grief and quiet introspection to explosive confrontations and high-stakes maneuvering, with every character forced to navigate a delicate balance between seeking justice, exacting revenge, and protecting themselves and their loved ones, because the truth about betrayal is never simple, and the emotional complexity of Nick's death revealed layers of human behavior, motivation, and vulnerability that no one could have predicted, illustrating the delicate interplay between loyalty, morality, and survival in a city where every secret has the potential to destroy, every choice carries weight, and every action reverberates far beyond the immediate moment, changing the lives, hearts, and destinies of everyone involved. And as Genoa City continued to absorb the shock, new storylines emerged, from unexpected alliances forming between former rivals to whispered threats in shadowy corners, each new twist amplifying the tension and deepening the emotional stakes, because in a city like this, tragedy breeds opportunity, and the death of Nick Newman, shocking and devastating as it was, became a catalyst for transformation, forcing every character to confront their own limits, desires, and capacity for both love and vengeance, while the accomplice's presence, still an unseen but omnipresent threat, cast a shadow over every interaction, every decision, and every alliance, ensuring that the tension, drama, and emotional intensity would continue to dominate the lives of Genoa City's residents in ways that were as unpredictable as they were profound, because in the aftermath of such a shocking betrayal, the city itself becomes a character, alive with secrets, plots, and emotional undercurrents that shape the fates of all who live there, leaving no one untouched, no relationship untested, and no heart unscarred. As the reverberations of Nick Newman's death continued to echo through every corner of the young and the restless, reshaping identities, destinies, and the very fabric of the city in ways that would be felt for generations to come, because in the end, the death of a man like Nick Newman is never just a death. It is a seismic event, a moral reckoning, a crucible of human emotion and ambition, and a story that redefines the possibilities of drama, betrayal, and redemption in a city where the stakes are always impossibly high, the secrets impossibly deep, and the consequences impossibly permanent. And as Genoa City struggled to process the enormity of Nick Newman's death and the shocking betrayal by the accomplice, whispers of secrets, yet unrevealed, began to circulate, fueling paranoia and mistrust among even the closest friends and family, because in a city built on ambition, power, and hidden agendas, No one could be certain who to trust, who might harbor a grudge, or who might exploit this moment of vulnerability for personal gain, and every glance, every word, every gesture carried the weight of potential deceit, leaving hearts racing, alliances fragile, and the city poised on a knife's edge where grief, revenge, and unrelenting tension would continue to shape lives in ways as unpredictable as they were devastating.